I'm going to talk about process mining in practice, how it affects businesses, how it is used for businesses, and as an introduction, I'm going to take a character that I'm going to carry through the whole presentation. So the character's name today is Taivo, and Taivo is a customer excellence manager at some company that sells stuff to various customers. Tom is at the heart a business person, cares about customers, cares about recurrent sales revenue, cares about efficient service delivery, and all sorts of different things. Every week or every month, Taivo has a different challenge, a different set of questions to address those challenges. One time it is, why did the churn rate suddenly increase last month? Why did we have less recurrent customers, repeat customers? Why did the number of customers complaints has been rising in the past month? Why is it that our response times for customer complaints has gone up, even though we just hired a few new people 3 months ago and we have trained them, and we thought that by now we will have our customer handling times in a better shape? Why is it that our response times why is it, what should I do about it? Where does the problem come from? And Taivo has a lot of choices to make. He could automate certain parts of the processes for serving customers. He gets every so often some vendor, pushing some technology, for example, a chatbot, to handle some of the customer inquiries and try to filter them through. Or he just saw this co-browsing platform, a few weeks ago, where salespeople can, start connecting with the customers while they are browsing on their website. So that's Taivo every day. At the same time, on the other side, there is a bunch of information systems that are maintained by an IT department. And those systems have a lot of data that can tell you a lot of things about what Taivo is asking. Your customers' website visits, they are there. Your customers' orders, they are there. When did they arrive? When were they served? When were they shipped? When were they delivered? Your customer complaints are somewhere there. The activity of your salespeople calling out on customers is all there. Not all there, but some of it is there. The activity of your customer service staff is there. Your shipments, your product returns, you know it. It's in different systems, but it's somewhere there, out there. So it's kind of frustrating for Taivo to be having all these questions on the one side, and on the other side, in these immaterial information systems, there's lots of data that could answer potentially those questions. And I think one of the biggest frustrations of business people with data science is that the data is there, the data science is there, and the business science is there, or the business need is there, but connecting all those dots is a little bit difficult. So Taivo has a few choices on how to bridge this data with his problems. He can hire a data science or AI consultancy company that delivers successfully on 85% of his projects. How cool can he get? That's really good. So it's a nice option. It's a very tempting option. It's a very useful option when Taivo wants to address specific challenges, like when he has committed, we should bring in the chatbot, and getting the chatbot in, we should hire this 85% successful company. But it doesn't solve Taivo's problem like, okay, today is Monday and I'm just looking about data from my performance measures from January, and I have a problem. I cannot call the 85% successful data science company every Monday, asking X, Y, Z. It's not really how it works. He can hire one of those data scientists or AI scientists who has not yet been fired by AI. So we just heard about some of them. So it's nice if you can, you bring in your data scientist. However, the data scientist brings in the technical expertise, not the business expertise. So you create a certain disconnect between Taibo having these business questions, asking it, getting a data science team to work on them for 2-3 weeks, by which time Taibo has already moved to something else, and coming up with very sophisticated answers that are sophisticated from a technical perspective, but that do not take necessarily into account the full spectrum of business requirements. Sometimes the problem is to spell out those requirements. Taibo doesn't really know what he needs to ask. But if you get one of those data scientists, of course, grab them. Now, there is another option, and that's the one that I'm going to talk about today. You can set up a self-service system that allows Taibo to answer the questions he got by himself. That is kind of a little bit like the nirvana. So sure, when you have a specific challenge that goes beyond, what you can do by yourself, you tap into the data science teams, you tap into the consultants. But when you have your everyday question, you kind of want to be able to answer it yourself. So process mining is this emerging technology that allows you to bring self-service, data-driven process analysis into your desk. So the whole idea is, there are nowadays, with the level of digitization we have in companies, and especially companies that are using relatively standard type of systems out there, like CRM systems or ERP systems, there is a lot of data in their system that can be collected in a relatively standardized manner and put into a certain format, merged into a certain format by means of a data preparation pipeline that will put it in a shape that makes it suitable for self-service process analysis, in particular using process mining algorithms. And of course, process mining is not the only technology out there. Of course, there are other tools that are trying to do that for, on the customer analytics side, on the supply analytics side, etc. But process mining is one that focuses specifically on Taibo's process problems, problems that have to do with things getting stuck in the middle of the company, like customer complaints getting stuck somewhere in the middle of the chain. And the whole idea of process mining, at the essence, is the following. Whatever information, whatever data you have about your business processes in your customer relationship management system, in your enterprise resource planning system, in your ticket handling system back there, or all sorts of other systems you might have back there, most likely can be put, if it's about a business process, it most likely can be put in the following form: a big table that somewhere tells you that every row tells you that some activity happened, like a customer filed a complaint, or we replied to a customer, or that we returned a product to a customer returned the product, or we shipped the product to a customer, or the product was delivered. That type of things that tells you what happened. Some sort of timestamps. Nowadays, systems are pretty good at recording when things happen. Your typical ERP system is timestamping pretty much everything that is happening in your backend. And a case identifier, this is a bit of the tricky one, but you will often find it, is an identifier that tells you what process instance are you talking about. If we say we are talking about a customer complaint handling process, well, the customer complaint ID or the customer ID will do the job. If we are talking about a process for handling purchase orders, the purchase order ID. If we are talking about a process for handling invoices, the invoice ID. So that kind of business object identifiers that you will find in your information systems will allow you to relate events that happen in your system to instances of a process that you care about, like, for example, your order to cash process, or your quote to order process, or your customer complaint handling process. And then you can have a lot of other data depending on the system you have. You might know, for example, who did which task. You might know some data about like the amount of the purchase order, or the number of items that were ordered, or whether or not the purchase order was returned, the products were returned or not. You might have a whole bunch of other columns, And the whole idea of process mining is like, if you have those columns, just plug them in, right? As much as you want. And using that kind of tables or data frames, process discovery is like gives you a set of tools that by click and pointing allows you to do at least 4 operations. The first one is to automatically discover a map or a model of your business process, which allows you to see, what are the pathways that you are taking, and perhaps more importantly, which pathways are going in the wrong direction towards a customer complaint and which pathways are going in the right direction. So it allows you to generate visualizations with various semantics that allows Taivo to understand how the process looked like and how do the bad cases look like versus how do the good cases look like. Secondly, it allows you to identify deviations with respect to how you would like your process to do. So it allows you to sketch, this is how my process should look like, this is how my happy path should look like. Now, tell me, when am I deviating from this happy path? And among those deviations, which ones are causing some negative outcome for me? Like, for example, product returns. What are the deviations with respect to the happy path that signal that I will have a product return or a customer complaint? The third thing that it brings us is the ability to understand, to trace down the performance of the process down to the lowest possible level of specific steps. So, of course, you might know that your response times, from the moment you get a complaint to the moment it's resolved are very low, are very high. But what you want is to know where exactly does that come. How do the different phases and steps in the process are contributing to this slowdown? Where are your bottlenecks? And process mining allows you to, in a way, overlay in different ways performance information on top of process maps so that you can trace your performance problems, your process performance problems down to individual elements in your models. And then you can relate those back to your typical performance dashboards, and you can see the relation between trends in your performance measures and what is happening in your process. And finally, and perhaps foremost, it allows you to compare multiple variants of your process. For example, if you are running the same process in 2 different cities or in 2 different countries, and in one city you are doing well and in the other not, or in one country you are doing well and the other not, it's kind of very useful to identify the positive deviance in your process. Why is it that you are doing better in one place than in the other? Or vice versa, if you wish, the negative deviance. Although in general, we prefer to work with positive deviance, because it's more constructive. You can go and tell to the people in city A, hey, city B is doing a bit better, and guess what? They are doing this and this differently. And then city A might take it constructively and say, yeah, maybe we should do the same. When you do it in the other direction of negative deviance, people have a bit of reactions to it. By means of comparative process maps or comparative dashboards, process mining allows you just with clicks and pointers to answer that type of questions. Where is my positive deviance, or where is my negative deviance? And this is a technology that has reached a certain level of maturity, and that's what makes it very exciting, that has been tested across different industries. So no matter which industry you are, financial, healthcare, industrial, public sector, consumer services, you're going to find examples of companies like yours that have already implemented process mining in some way, and where managers are actually using it in practice. It's also not a technology that is confined to large companies, although naturally large companies can benefit a lot from there, because there is a lot of untapped value, untapped potential behind their processes. But also smaller enterprises are using it, particularly when smaller enterprises that are relying on relatively standardized systems, like, for example, if you are using a ServiceNow system or a Salesforce system or a ServiceNow system or a Microsoft Dynamics system, it's kind of fairly standard to connect your system to the process mining tool. Therefore, the setup cost is low, and you can still benefit from doing process mining, from setting up process mining to answer your business questions. Here at University of Tartu, in conjunction with our partners in with Apromore, a process mining company with which we partner, we have conducted a number of engagements. For example, we engaged with a financial company in the Nordic countries, a mid-sized Europe payment systems provider, where with their customer service team, where they wanted to improve their customer onboarding and their customer support and renewal and maintenance processes. And they had some problems in terms of customer satisfaction, where in some countries they were performing less well than they wanted. But fortunately, in other countries, they were performing very well. So by tapping into data from their subsystem and from their ServiceNow system via their existing data lake, we managed in a matter of weeks to analyze their customer onboarding processes and to identify these positive deviants, these practices that were helping them to have much better onboarding times in some countries than in others, as well as their negative deviance on the other side. And this led to a certain number of implementations, which after 6 months had a visible reduction. It led to visible reductions in the onboarding times and reductions also of rework loops, increases in Net Promoter Score, etc. And what is interesting here is that it's not a one-off exercise. By setting up the data ingestion pipeline into the process mining tool, now the analysts inside this company are able to conduct this analysis themselves. Business analysts conducting this analysis themselves on an ongoing basis in order to preempt problems and to be able to tackle problems in their customer onboarding and service processes in advance. We have also worked with in other areas, for example, with an Australian insurance company trying to bring up their times, their claims handling times down, with an Australian pension fund identifying also inefficiencies in their pension claim processes, trying to find out bottlenecks that were preventing them from serving their customers fast enough, and identifying areas where they were not complying with respect to their own internal regulations. And we identified, for example, that although about 80% of their pension claims were following the happy path, there were a certain 18% that were not following them. And what is interesting is that this 18% were following 450 different paths, which we managed to classify and to come up with patterns that signal deviation with respect to their happy path, their main pathway, and to come up with ideas on how to prevent process instance from deviating from the direction that they were normally set. So by that, identifying, for example, rework loops that could be avoided, tasks that were being skipped and that later were causing problems, etc. And that led to a significant increase in the efficiency of this process and the delivery times. We have done similar engagements with different other companies, not only in the business sector, but for example, in the field, in a supercomputing center in Italy, helping them to analyze their change requests, incident management, help requests, fault handling requests extracted from their ticketing system, from their help desk ticketing system. And by there identifying certain back and forth, for example, between teams that were causing frustrations to some of their users. This is just a small sample of to show where process mining is being used. This is the process mining database applications from 2020, which shows a very strong use in Central Europe in particular, and a pickup in North America. And Estonia is still trying to catch up, but I'm pretty sure that next year there are already, and we're already working with some Estonian organizations, at the moment confidentially, but this will be published later in the year, that are already deploying process mining to continuously analyze their business processes. Thank you.